from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Isabel Westbury in London, where we're sitting back and enjoying the smug satisfaction of England's evident skill in prevailing in super over finishes, even if we appear to have a habit of doing so over the nice guys of world cricket. Sorry, chaps, that's the game, until we change the rules or something.
Izzy, Jim Maxwell for ABC Radio in Sydney. There's a red glow on the horizon every day here. Lots of bushfires around, which has been wreaking some havoc beyond Sydney. But in Sydney, it's the New South Wales cricket team that are wreaking plenty of havoc. They won every game so far in the Sheffield Shield. They've just completely demolished Western Australia at the time when the Australian 14-man squad has been named for the return to what I would call, Izzy, proper cricket, test cricket next week.
And I'm Sunil Gupta for All India Radio in Delhi. And Jim, you'll be pleased to hear this. I just met up with some old friends from Sydney. They'd come to India for the first time. And I was meeting the gentleman for the first time. I knew the lady. And we were chatting over dinner. And we talked a little bit about cricket, of course. And I said, well, you know, I occasionally do this show with Jim Maxwell. And I could say I jumped up in his estimation about 15 places immediately. Jim Maxwell, you don't tell me. Really, where's the program, etc., etc. So there you are, Jim.
Well, we got another listener. Fantastic.
You sure you jumped up in her estimation or jumped down? Well,
I jumped up in his estimation.
Greetings to you both, of course, and always want to hear about cricketing havoc rather than any other havoc. But, Sunil, there does appear to be a lot of news at the moment coming from the vast cricketing hotbed of India. India's first test of the season has just got underway. But the build-up to that match has been overshadowed almost by not one, but two record-breaking feats this week. Firstly, we're talking about a topic that always gets tongues wagging. A child prodigy has hit the headlines. That's, of course, 15-year-old Shefali Verma, who, after becoming the youngest ever India batter to make an international half-century, she did it again the following day. 2 50s, 2 matches in 2 days against the West Indies. Sunil, can you tell us more about her?
Well, you know, it's a modern-day fairy tale, and it's the stuff of movies, really. It's full of slaying of dragons and all that sort of thing. You know, she grew up in a very conservative family in a very conservative small town called Rohtak, very close to Delhi, and in a state where women are not encouraged, in fact discouraged, to go out and play any form of sport whatsoever. But her father was a cricket fan, and she, at the age of 9, apparently saw Sachin Tendulkar playing his last first-class innings in the stadium there at Rohtak. And she was on his shoulders, and, you know, that sort of the cricketing bug bit her. But the problem was that she was a girl and there were only boys playing cricket, so they refused to play with her. So the dad, I must say, and I take my hat off to him, he cut her hair short, made her look like a boy, and she went and played with the boys every weekend. Yeah, it was amazing. You know, and for her now, at the age of, 15 years and 285 days, she's broken that Sachin's record of 16 years and 240 days of scoring the first international half-century. So really, as I said, that's a fairy tale come true. And I'm so happy for this young lady to show the pluck to go out there and compete, with the boys. And, of course, great kudos, I think, to the family who withstood, a lot of stuff coming in from the neighbours and stuff. And how can you allow a girl to go out and play? But, as I said, that's the stuff that fairy tales are made of.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a remarkable story. And to think that was, she was 9, 6 years ago, and how quickly attitudes are changing and developing. Hopefully we'll see many more of her, but perhaps with slightly easier entry into cricket. I'm sure it will sweep across the nation. It's a wonderful story.
Well, certainly. Women's cricket, as you know, is really catching on. We've got some very good crowds when India play their T20s and ODIs.
Yeah, well, Australia dominating now, but I think it's a matter of time before India catch up pretty soon. But another story, of course, on our radar is that of Deepak Chahar. The right-arm seamer recorded the best ever bowling figures in a 2020 international with 6 wickets for 7 runs against Bangladesh. Was this a surprise, Sunil? Chahar isn't exactly a household name, and certainly outside India. But then again, as we've just heard, India have a habit of making household names pretty quickly.
Yes, household names and fairy tales, because this is another fairy tale, let me tell you, and this time with a baddish wolf in the picture, in the tale. Apparently, 11 years ago, 2000, or well, thereabouts, about 2010, 9 years ago, Deepak Chahar, who plays for Rajasthan, was in the Rajasthan Cricket Academy about the age of 18 or 19, and Greg Chappell was the coach. And apparently he told this young lad, well, go and look for another profession because cricket is not for you.
Oh dear.
But his father stood up for him and said, no, don't let your head sort of, hang down. And his Indian coach stood up for him. And then he went on in 2010 to take 8 wickets for 10 on his Ranji Trophy debut against Hyderabad. So it's been, as I said, India's full of fairy tales. It really is. And now, after a long time, because that was 2010, he's been in and out. He had injuries and so on and so forth. But then in 2018, he was selected for the Chennai Super Kings, and MS Dhoni mentored him. And he made his debut in 2018 in July in England, in Bristol against England, picked up Jason Roy as one of his first wickets, and hasn't looked back. And he really looked the part. I saw that this record-breaking feat, and he really looked the part, at a tight T20 international.
Well, it's lucky Bollywood is such a thriving industry. I feel as though there's a number of different film scripts in the making there. Let's turn our attention down under. It's the first test of the summer next week, Australia versus Pakistan at the Gabba. Jim, any surprises in the Aussie squad? It's just been announced.
Well, there are, because we've got Cameron Bancroft included, averaging 11 in Shield this year.
Right.
And according to the chairman of selectors, Trevor Hones, he's improved noticeably. But I think there might be a few question that, other than the fact he managed to scrounge 49 when the A-team was collapsing against Pakistan the other day. So he's in the 14-man squad. You would assume the recalled Joe Burns will be opening with Warner, and Bancroft would probably miss out. But it's an interesting decision, and a lot of it comes around because all of a sudden Will Pukowski is pulled out after Nick Maddinson pulled out after Glenn Maxwell pulled out because of their poor mental health there. So that's impacted Australia's choices for this first test. So it's all a bit of a palpitating prospect at the moment after the young Pakistani pace attack ripped through the so-called next best Australian batting in Perth the other day. It's quite tantalising, isn't it?
Oh, nothing more than a bit of suspense hanging around the start of a test series. And actually, one more big piece of news concerning Pakistan. As soon as they leave Australia, they're actually going to host a test series in Pakistan for the first time since the attack on the Sri Lanka team bus in 2009. And it is, in fact, it's astonishing, actually. It's Sri Lanka who will be visiting to play 2 tests in December. And I think it's quite a remarkable story to think that we've seen some T20s, a couple of ODI tours to Pakistan, but this really feels like a huge step and a very welcome next step, Sunil.
Oh yes, I really think so. It's 10 years, and I must give credit to the Sri Lankans, and we subcontinental types hang together in some form, as I see. But no, it's really good to see Test cricket return. I think everybody wants normalcy as far as possible. Perhaps this will help, because cricket, like everywhere in the subcontinent, in Pakistan too, is an absolute passion. And I'm sure that they'll get some good crowds for the Test matches as well. And let's hope everything goes, it goes off the way that it's supposed to go off. There are good Test matches. And other teams are encouraged to tour as well. And I think that will only help Pakistan and the subcontinent.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Next on Stumped, to the fast-developing cricket nation of Nepal. The mountainous Asian country has produced one of the star players on the global T20 circuit, and the national team has risen quickly through the divisions of the World Cricket League. However, it's also a nation that still struggles for equipment and facilities at grassroots level, and that's where the MCC has decided to step in. The historic club have been visiting the country on a legacy tour aimed at leaving a sustainable and meaningful impact on the country. And the MCC touring side is captained by the former Hampshire batter Jimmy Adams, and he's been telling Stump reporter Sam Sheringham more about the trip.
I suppose it's slightly different from the normal MCC tours, which do go to many parts of the world to promote cricket and bring the spirit of cricket to, I suppose, places that are where cricket is less accessible and less well known. this tour has a legacy part to it because it's teamed up with the MCC Foundation and a charity called Kadasha to help grassroots cricket and put some structure in place in the lesser developed places, in some schools, build up the coaching networks, coach up the coaches, and give access to school children, both girls and boys, that wouldn't otherwise have access to the sport. So, I think there's a women's team coming out next year from the MCC and then another men's tour the following year. So it's a fair investment into hopefully the future of Nepalese cricket.
And from what you've seen so far, what are your impressions of the grassroots cricket scene there, and what help are you able to give them? There's
been a huge enthusiasm for the games. The Indian influence is very obvious to see. When we were playing the games against the international side at the University Stadium, the crowds were fantastic. But on the flip side, I've been to India a few times and to a few other subcontinent countries, and cricket's very visual. You see a lot of people playing cricket in the parks, almost doing wherever they can, find a little space to play. But I don't feel we've seen as much of that in Nepal, and I wonder whether some of that is that access isn't quite as easy or not quite as easy to do for youngsters out here. So I'd hope that over the course of time, with the help, the MCC's help, that future teams coming back here will see that enthusiasm running right through from the juniors through to the top end, and help put or secure the Nepalese cricketing future, I suppose. They've done a huge amount here already. Their national team has been very successful. I would say I'm not hugely experienced, but from the bit I've seen and we as a group have seen, that on the back of actually pretty limited resource, certainly compared to other associate countries.
Yeah, because, they've got a genuine superstar, haven't they, in Sandeep Lamikani, a star of the T20 leagues around the world, despite being only 19. Do you feel that he's an inspiration to young cricketers coming through?
Absolutely. Guys, the crowd's coming to watch, they watched us play the under-19s on the first game here, and Sandeep turned up to have a bowl. And about 80% of the crowd decided to watch him have a bowl rather than the game going on itself. So, people like him will be hugely important to this country's cricketing future, bring the game to the masses. And if the MCC can help to provide that at grassroots level, so those people that hear of or watch Sandeep play, they're able to get their own access to the game, and fingers crossed in the future, a trailblazer like Sandeep, can help bring in, the Lamijani Mark 2, 3, 4 and 5 down the line. And there's the Nepalese national team have these superstars playing in the world leagues. It's an opportunity that I think everyone involved with cricket here is hoping to and needs to capitalise on.
That's MCC captain Jimmy Adams speaking to Sam Sheringham from Nepal. Jim, Sunil, a couple more talking points before we go. West Indies batter Nicholas Pooran has been banned for 4 matches for ball tampering. The 24-year-old was caught on camera using his thumb to scrape the ball and seam during the final match of the 3-0 one-day series win over Afghanistan. So what do we make of this?
Oh, it's probably about right. It sounds a pretty dumb thing to do, given that his team was pretty dominant in the series anyway. Did he realise that there was a camera there or not? The scrutiny around all cricket matches now is such that it's hard to get away with much, so I don't think he was very smart. Let's put it that way. And probably the penalty justifies the offence. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Jim's inimitable ways. We've talked about this before. Yeah. Well, obviously the circumstances and the main actors were different. It was not sandpaper and all that sort of thing. It was silly. And I think the important thing was that he owned up. Manfully immediately. I think that made a big difference, unlike what happened with Steve Smith and David Warner.
Just finally, here's a snippet of news that did make me chuckle this week. Amidst all the turmoil of British politics at the moment, it was revealed that the Lancastrian father of Lindsay Hoyle, the newly elected House of Commons Speaker, had named his son after the Australian cricketer Lindsay Hassett, who was the vice-captain of Don Bradman's Invincibles back in the late 1940s. I can't even begin to imagine what it must have been like being a boy called Lindsay in 1970s Bolton and having to explain your unusual name as one that belonged to a bloke from Australia 30 years back. They do make them tough up north, I suppose. I thought this was quite an unusual phenomenon, especially when it comes to the names of some of the more, let's say, ancient cricket players. But one of my colleagues at the Telegraph, his wife, had a son a few days before Ben Stokes' heroics at the Headingley Ashes Test last summer. And while they didn't quite name him Ben, they did call him Wilfred, after Wilfred Rhodes, perhaps England's greatest all-rounder of all time. And coincidence? I think not. I say written in the stars. Jim, Sunil, any good examples of people named after famous cricketers you can think of?
More the other way round, if I can come at it from that perspective. Bill Lorry, he was named William Morris Lorry after Billy Hughes, one of our famous prime ministers.
Right.
William Morris Hughes. And the most interesting one of the lot was Nixon McLean, who played for the West Indies. And his father used to listen to the BBC World Service. And when his son was born, he called him Nixon Alexei McNamara McLean, because they were the three prominent international personalities coming to him over the BBC at the time. So they're the ones that stick out to me. But have you got any other interesting ones around that sort of?
Yeah, well, exactly, a similar sort of thing. Sachin Tendulkar, his father, was a fan of a Bollywood composer, music composer, very famous and very great composer called Sachin Dev Burman. And he was a fan of his music and his songs. And so he called Sachin after Sachin Dev Burman, right? So in India, as you know, it's Bollywood and cricket that goes together, and that's the way it went together right there.
Well, we might get some correspondence on this. I'm sure there are plenty of other examples out there that we haven't jumped on, but they'll be there.
Well, that's it for this week's Stumped on All India Radio. Stay in touch with us throughout the week on Twitter. We're at BBC WS Sport via the hashtag BBC Stumped. Thanks to Jim Maxwell and Sunil Gupta, and to you for listening. Join us again next time. Goodbye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.